there seems to be no particular interest in having me click on one thing or another, various opportunities, various sites, and so on. It's as if rather than slam the door, as some people do, if I did click, or I would, the content, I guess, it's like walking through a field of fairly tall grass and quite a few cow pies to step into while wearing flip-flops, and so I'm reluctant. The way I've been treated lately, the severity of what is happening over time, just increasingly gruesome, is taking a toll, and it's no secret. I would say too, though, that the brand of gallows humor is getting a little bit much, So yeah, I tend to avoid more of the opportunities because the kind of clickbait that is there. And then too, I'm blindsided when I click on something to see some of the most horrific ads. I just can't party with you folks quite as some seem entitled to, and so no matter who you are, if you're preceded by something really vile, then I don't consider that viable. I know people want to say that, well, people are not responsible for some of the ads or placements. Ultimately they are, and so I'm just telling you that there are some ads that preclude any interest in whatever the hell you have to say, no matter what you're trying to do or say that you're trying to do. Many people have said they're going to do something they never have, and I don't really react much because I don't have very high expectations. I think a lot of people lie about the future. Some thinking, oh well, it's a safe prediction of this, that, and the other, or wishful thinking, or whatever, and then others just want to be nasty about the truth. And so, meanwhile, I've run out of things to say. Certainly, maybe I'll think of something to say fairly soon. The situation here is worse than ever in so many ways. The people who visit, I will say that the lady, the one who knitted the cushions for my rocking chair, also removed now, popped in this morning just to say good morning, more or less. She's not one of the many who are so far down your list that you probably wouldn't say much. I won't either. And then the tribe of Susan and Patty and fellow travelers who really have a firm grasp of each other with passion, and that works out to be a continuing delight. That they should get to exercise the righteousness that their tribalism provides, and meanwhile in the background there are those who, I guess I could click on one cow pie or another, but I'm reluctant, wandering around here immiserated in so many ways. The percentages have shifted. I'm not saying that I'm not. There are gnats in here. Ever since yesterday, a cloud of gnats came into the room because the door was open while they were having fun. I'm not saying I can't find people on my subscriptions list, but anything else, the cow pies are really, it's not even 50-50. So there haven't been many good surprises. So what I'm saying is, unless something changes, there could be any number of changes. Some kind of serendipity or what, I don't know, but there's no, my back is against the wall. I feel as though I was slammed against the wall, and I've just kind of slid down onto the floor. And that's about all. I guess what I'm saying, beginning with the events of October 7th, it's really just been one raid after another and one atrocity, and the hoopla and the fun you make out of that, I guess, what do you do? Go graduate from some drama school or something? I don't know. You muster locals for just about anything, and they're glad to cooperate, and obviously there's not much I can say about it. And besides, if I elaborated on something like Laurel and Hardy, who gives a damn? It would be in poor taste. It would be in very poor taste, to go back in time. Oh, these gnats are everywhere. To go back in time, and obsess about Laurel and Hardy, who are the stars of the day. I don't even know what to say. I'm grumbling now. And many people offer, some of the cow pies offer some, they would launch into the denunciation of their peers, as if I would, somehow want to watch that. Why? I mean, my life is, that of receivership. I receive whatever you throw at me because there's nothing else. And usually it has to do with the past, somebody's interpretation of the past, whether it's the distant past or the recent past. And some of the ones that I guess it was a mistake to rely on PMs, because some people I can see what has happened since some of them, and so then therefore I guess I should not. Now then the goose eggs on the YouTube, but that's not what I'm referring to. It's the thought that counts. Whether we know about one set of numbers or another. I was told long ago about what those numbers mean for what reasons of comity, COMITY, rather than upset people. They just let things show up the way they have. I'm not saying that's the reason for what I suffer, but what I suffer is a kind of indifference that is very measured, deliberate, and boring. And so I see no reason often to volunteer much in the way of private messaging. So that's pretty much been brought to a halt by reason of the results or lack of them, and that leaves a handful of people that I subscribe to who are dependable. They really are. You know who you are, and you know why. And I imagine this means I'll be passing over, some really good stuff. I can click these filters that are so problematic at the top of the YouTube page. There's one that I use a lot, or I have. new to you, and but now fully half of them are what I would call cow pies, by virtue of having no useful content, and usually by that I mean merely it's focused on the political past of the United States or the world. I've had enough of that. I would literally look for classics of Laurel and Hardy before I would read the kinds of interpretations that don't measure up to prep school scholarship, let alone college level or postgrad scholarship. I'm egalitarian, but what I notice is a pomp and circumstance for populist royalty. There was a time when people said, well, FDR was a traitor to his class. He's an egalitarian. Now we see, there's this freak that that recently quit her job, who had infected several administrations. And she's one of this new breed of royalty. And some of it with all the trappings of royalty. I saw somebody got off a plane and you would think that it was, pick your favorite name, crowds of people in uniforms strutting around, a band playing, more and more of that around the world for the media. And so that's for lack of any good government or anything else. But anyway, I might be wrong about this because it's just an impression I have, but FDR was the last president of the United States who was what I would call egalitarian, and he didn't like any number of things. He didn't like presidential parades. And when they said, we want to put blue and red lights on your car, he said, that's too far. You cannot do that. I will not have that. But after him, a glorified Cadillac, blue and red, and sirens, and all the rest. And so, water cannons are next, being paraded around, I'm sure. But anyway, there's just not much, for me to say. I might maybe explore one of these channels that sells books. I don't know. I haven't looked in years. I'm not sorry about that. There should be good stuff to read. Good reports in the news, any number of things. Colleges ought to offer stuff, any number of things, but it's all mercantile stuff. The British used to say of themselves they were a nation of shopkeepers. And what redeemed them in all that is what quality there was for sale in shops, whether it be books or anything else. Now what do you get? Something made out of petroleum products that glows in the dark, or whatever. And shopkeepers are gone. There's only Amazon or eBay or what else? Temu is now on the scene. What else? But I don't think I can turn to Temu for great literature or something like that. I used to say that in a sense, YouTube was staggering under the weight of the challenges it faces to meet demands of all kinds. And they've come through fairly well, I think. I've been bruised a little bit a few times. Once I had everything I had destroyed. Not even an apology. That was over 10 years ago. And then I know they've struggled with all the stuff that is on offer. They've done a pretty good job. But personally, no one can honestly say that there's any attempt to match my browsing history with commensurate advertising. It's an open secret. It's as open as the secrets that people have about the truth of my being in this room for whatever reason. So, it just kind of, everything is kind of stale. And the gallows humor about recent events beginning in October and through yesterday's theft, just not really funny. And now that doesn't mean that YouTube can command people to send in good videos, but with millions of videos available, what's put forward on what might be a search for new to you, well, I gotta say, there's a kind of metaphorical foot on the back of my neck, and my nose, eyes, and mouth are underwater except for the straw that I breathe through, and it isn't, likely that I would do much better than be able to breathe freely. Thank you. Cyril, good. I like that. Thanks. It isn't likely that I'm going to breathe freely when rescued from the environment. I don't see any incentive for people to remove me from this squalor. Margaritaville would be, fairly sardonic, civilized reference to what you folks can claim as your own, because everything is an open secret. And the traditions that have come down for thousands of years in terms of anecdotes written up this way and that show, I think, that people literally are entitled to see their favorite routine reenacted in this scenario. And so there's not much to refer to. And of course, too, there's no way to pay the bills anywhere else. I literally couldn't even pay the power bill to run an air conditioner at today's rates, nor do I have any way to pay for a space that could be cooled by an air conditioner. Other than what? To be victimized and have the reality of my situation lied about, which is done consistently. That and when there's no comment at all, isn't that cute? So all this just adds up to a general comment that things are simply in a nosedive around here in terms of quality of life. Well, I no longer have a quality of life because what is it? Isn't that a fine oscillating fan in my room? And there are people who don't even have that in their squalor, and so on. Well, meanwhile, what? It's better for me to click on good tapes made by an expert, a crew member on a big cruise ship, talking about how the other half lives. We are a binary nation now, the haves and have-nots. You're either one of the haves or you're one of the have-nots, and with that goes a carceral state. That is, those who don't have are pretty much controlled, if not by literal Yale lock and keys on a door, then by the way dollars are manipulated to keep people in check. We're dissolving what we call civilization, which is a move away from a simple or simplistic binary environment, where everything is built around transactions between the haves and the have-nots. Civilization has always been the mitigation of that. Some would say the underlying reality. We admit that a sovereign government has a monopoly on force, at least in theory, and that people then have something to say, to build a consensus, to have checks and balances, so that monopoly is not as naked as having this or that tyrant running around in his little domain. We're dissolving away a lot of that around the world, and some of that has to do with technology. People have commented on that, but nobody's done anything about it. What can we say about that? Technology is like the weather. People comment about it, but nobody does anything about it. It isn't as though we have to resign ourselves to a very binary kind of place, but that's what we're moving toward more rapidly now, because the haves, because of the efficiency of mass production or technology or whatever, the efficiency of the economy is such that many can have, but it does yet depend on there being a sufficient number of have-nots to make the presumptions, the religion of capitalism, the religion of democracy, and the religion of the opposite work. People say we don't need a system based on fear, but if people fear socialism in the U.S., if they fear democratic socialism, then that will make them work harder, to keep what they think is right, and that would be, an entirely free capitalist system, even though we don't really have that, and we're not close to democratic socialism. But then beyond that, there are fears of communism, and fear of anarchy, and fear of fascism. All these fears would require what? It would require that we have the have-nots who have to be identifiable. Not all of them have to be, camping on the streets of L.A., where they can be despised because somehow they are not deserving of anything else, or they wouldn't be there. They can be found in neighborhoods, zip codes, whatever. They can be found in this or that building, or whatever. People who are the have-nots. If they were not there, then they could not be both despised and feared. Why? Because among the people who have things are those who have microphones, who can say, beware of, the rising tide of the unwashed have-nots, who would have you bend to their mob instincts and stuff. So, and if there were no have-nots, then the ideology of prosperity and the false notion of the moral hazard, the moral hazard is a notion that's used terribly but effectively by the people who have. But the system requires many have-nots. Even if you have to build prisons and give life sentences for jaywalking, because so much depends on the trickle-down economy, all the way down to the jerk who turns the keys in a highly automated jail. He benefits. He's one of the haves. He doesn't have much, but he has a wage adjusted for inflation and probably a health plan, whereas the have-nots are locked up. Then in terms of demographics, people know who's locked up or whatever, and neighborhoods filled with have-nots, and a political system that develops surveillance now. I understand. I don't know what the timetable is or what it means, but I agree that technically it's possible to see to it that people have no cash. Everything is, simply on a master file somewhere that can be deleted. Like my YouTube channel can be deleted accidentally or whatever, like it was 10 years ago. If I had $4 million in the bank, the touch of a button and boom, it's gone. Well, people say, of course not. Everything's redundant and this, that, and the other, right? But it's still technically true that there are ways and means to do anything with your money if it's only in a machine filled with digits, a digital machine. Whereas if you have an antique cigar box, you could have a few $20 bills, I'm told that they're going to go after that. And I'm not worried about that too much, because it's like the issue of surveillance. Technically, I don't think anybody's reading everybody's email somewhere. But if something happened, in particular, if a have-not did something, then they could suddenly dig for that information out of a huge number of data files that are never looked at. So you have to think in terms of not what you said in an email to your grandmother, but if you rob a bank, they can probably find out what you said to everybody for the last 10 years. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it is the reality. So what are people going to do? I know what else they're going to do. They're not willing to risk much that I might read or watch or hear. I can tell. Things have changed. They began changing radically in October. And I don't know who you could ask about, who's reading over my shoulder or already comment on, opinions of me from people on high, as if by somebody in the Philippines. No, nobody in the Philippines said anything about what I think. But people did read an official thing that's never been apologized for, and things have fallen apart since then. So now I can't really keep track of what people think. But no, I don't plan to, step into any cow pies, much less anybody with a message predicated by some of the worst ads. Some are worse than others. But we're moving toward, it's a technological thing. It's like, you can think of it this way. We had an analog civilization. Now we're moving to a digital civilization, and the capacities of a digital civilization is to zero in or to focus on or to drill down to tiny little things like I am in a sea of opinions and actions. And so people want to be, it's like during basic training, and they say, we're going to take volunteers to do something. Generally, I tried to stay in the center of a crowd, and they would pick off people, from the edges. That's a common thing people did, and they do, I guess, today. But people don't want to comment to me or anything. After all, they did, and then I was thought to be someone to put on a list, and so people don't want to, communicate anymore, and I understand that. So I'm going to rot in hell, that's all. I'm going to rot in hell, and I have a few friends who don't comment about that. They just simply share some of the good stuff in their lives. Not bragging, but they just, their daily lives are admirable, And then there are those who, I guess, work for the people above them and make promises they can't keep. Not that they would, but I mean, the promises kind of convey a obsequiousness to a few who make big promises, and they want to hear others make promises. It's a game I find silly and tedious. Well, now, those people are not the only silly and tedious people. I'm silly and tedious also. But I maintain I would do better because, saying garbage in, garbage out. And wow. I wish I had something better to say, but I think it's worth looking into, the idea that, people, an analogy. People have formed a cult about vinyl records. They figure their powerful intellect has figured that the real stuff is on vinyl and can yet be put on vinyl because somehow that's the real way of doing it, and that, for example, DVDs are just slipshod, cheap stuff by comparison. Where are the engineers who can point to the fallacies? Well, maybe they've decided that they can make more money, as they always have, by dealing with people with disposable income, whether it be corporate or personal. But as a rule, people do not know. I'm talking about most of the industry. People do not know how to fine-tune a digital recording environment to compete with vinyl records and all of that. I guess, I think that's analogous to how far and widespread the ignorance is about something that therefore changes a lot of people's thinking. It's not so terribly bad to think somebody would, have his turntable there and vinyl records on. Okay. But the real problem is why don't people do what they ought with DVDs? Some people are recording fairly well, but it's it requires a little bit of money for equipment that is too scarce. It's not rocket science, but means of production are not what they should be for a fair amount of good stuff to be had. And I digress. I shouldn't bother with it, but and then democracy is the same way. We have, a voting system that's 300 years old. It was more or less an Australian ballot. Now it's not, no matter what you hear. And also it's so old and so decrepit and so corrupted that we're way overdue for a cancellation. Cancel these people whose religion is all about paper ballots. They say they can, recount paper ballots and this, that, and the other. Votes are slow to come in because, you can imagine what's taken into consideration. Who gets caught doing what? Well, almost nobody, to say the least. And that's good if nothing's happening, right? If nobody's caught, then nothing's happening. I would say that people prefer that. But then forget all that and say cancel out all the crud, the crap, and go to the mobile vote option. I say option because not everybody can afford a smartphone that would be safe to use with a mobile vote option. Well, rather than extend the Obama phone concept to everybody, which would be nice, but it wouldn't do very well in the free market of goods and services. It can be an option. Those who have a cell phone can be used today for completely secure voting. And then if it was commonplace, then the next iteration of cell phones could have a module that would make the whole process even more solid, rock solid, incorruptible, you might say. And of course at the same time do the same thing for other data. There wouldn't have to be a rush, though. A good phone made, say, anytime in the last 18 months has all it takes to support a very complete optional voting system. But because everybody can't afford that, then the option idea is, of course, that if you can't afford to vote with a mobile device, with a smartphone, then you could stroll into your nearest polling place and vote there. And because of the phone voting, which would get just about universal use, what would that leave? 5% of people who didn't? Well, that would leave for the polling places very less crowded than ever before. And as for the fraud or the risk of fraud, I'll put it that way, in terms of paper ballot, mail-in ballots, and all the other schemes, I'd just simply say to hell with it. Of course, you said that to me. I've repeated myself too often, and here it is, 37 minutes of stuff that isn't much, but then I guess what I'm going to end up doing is watching the cable TV. That's really about all that can be operated in a room here anymore. With the rule changes, I'll probably just no better off than most of my life. For me, it's been nice to enjoy the internet as I have, but since arrival here, it's gotten worse, and now it's too problematic, to be what it was. So, what does that mean? That the Proud Boys and their sisters will be seen, I guess, on satellite TV. And as for the ads that precede some others, well, probably not of any lasting interest. I don't plan to just, walk away from the entire project, the internet, for me, my project here. But, it's like poisoning the well, once characterized as I have been by some people, not in the Philippines, as some people joke, about what happened. It's really funny. But because of that, people don't want to suffer as a result of that. They read over my shoulder the same as some others, and so this is, in effect, it's commensurate with what else has happened around here, and so that leaves me with not much more than the cable TV. I've referred to cow pies. I don't want to click on cow pies. Who would? You know. But, you know, if I click on anything, I get ads that I know other people don't appreciate. I've suffered some of them a long time, but now they are more prevalent than ever, and they precede and interrupt content that isn't worth the effort. And I've told you what the exceptions are. So I'll leave you to better things than to watch. If you watch this far, like a lot of people say, if you watch this far, then let me just say, what's the saying? Heaven help you. I hope you can do better than watch for 40 minutes of this. But I thank you, those of you who have. What I'm saying, you know, pertains to goodwill for people who might agree on some things with me, but that isn't worth much, you know. I mean, agreeing with me is hardly worthwhile. I've seen proof of that. In fact, more proof recently than before, you know.